with the emperor not long outliving his would-be usurper. Constans II was struck on the head with a bucket and assassinated by one of his servants as he took.
No, bro. I could just imagine that playing out in my head. Alright, haven't forgotten about this series. Early Muslim expansion.
In the last two parts,
yo, I gotta do my
expansion. A previously united
Italian War series because I'm like behind on that as well.
Unstoppable conquests of the caliphate halted by outbreaks of internal conflict. Today, we return to our focus on the frontiers, in particular the North African holdings of the Byzantine Empire, as old conflicts reignite under the new Umayyad Caliphate, while the heirs of Rome struggle with internal conflicts of their own. Expanding just as rapidly as the Caliphate is our sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Skip.
Caliphate. The reigning emperor in Constantinople was
Wait, there you go.
During the early years of the Umayyad Caliphate, the reigning emperor in Constantinople was Constans II, who faced an increasingly dire situation on numerous fronts. In 655, he had commanded the fleet that met disaster at the Battle of the Masts, only narrowly escaping with his own life. Uthman's murder and the beginnings of the first fitna the following year might have seemed like an opportunity for Constans to avenge his previous defeats.
Romans were unable to retake the loss due to conflict and brought off from the Caliphate's control. Bro, I swear Armenia is always like just its own oddball. At all these reactions that I do, Armenia is just always there, just its own oddball and just some type of sideshow. Always.
A divided foe. But Constance's attention was primarily turned to the west, where the Slavs and Lombards threatened Byzantine holdings in Greece and southern Italy. Not only did these European threats prevent him from taking advantage of the Islamic civil war, but they also necessitated a rise in taxes in provinces such as Sicily and North Africa, and seizures of church assets in Italy, sparking discontent and resentment towards Constans among both the provincial populations and the court in Constantinople. This political turmoil was worsened by another sort of conflict in the capital, a growing religious schism dating back to the reign of Heraclius. Efforts to reconcile differences between the Armenian and Greek orthodoxies led to the creation of the Monothelite movement. A sort of religious compromise followed, which failed to sway the majority of the Byzantine populace. By Constance's reign, this movement, that had been intended to reconcile Armenian and Greek religious divides, had simply created new divides within the capital, with Constance's attempt to quell the schism by banning all discussion of the controversy, even forcing Pope Martin I into exile after his condemnation of monothelitism, only creating new enemies for the embattled emperor. In 663, 2 years after the end of the First Fitna and the renewal of Arab attacks into Anatolia, Constans abandoned Constantinople and its hostile court and moved the Byzantine capital to Syracuse in Sicily.
Whoa, wait. The Romans... the Romans moved their freaking capital? What in the world?
Unfortunately, the move would not long forestall his downfall. After relocating the capital, Constans moved into Italy with all the forces the empire could muster, in hopes of defeating the Lombards and securing southern Italy. His efforts were...
Oh, bad number. 3 6s. Bad number. Bad. This is the devil's number right here. I'm not sure if Islam believes that as well, but 3 6s, devil's number. If you have anything with 3 6s on it, you will have bad luck. You will have the devil following you. It sounds ludicrous, but I like throughout my life, anytime I've had something with 3 6s on it, like actually a couple months ago, my freaking debit card had 3 6s on it, And that was like, I had so much bad luck coming on me. And my mother, who I talked about before, whom I've talked about how her country is extremely superstitious, like crusader level of superstitious. She took that debit card and she burnt it. She was like, yeah, no. She's like, no, 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 no. She's like, you gotta cut that out and you have to burn it because it has 3 6s on it. And she said that will cause bad luck. That will cause the devil to follow you because 3 6s is a devil's number. And I do believe that, personally speaking, because every single time I've had something with 3 6s on it, I kid you not, like it, bad luck, like something bad just always freaking happens. And you're not even supposed to say the number. You're not supposed to say, you know, that's why I'm saying 3 6s, because you're not supposed to say the actual number, because if you're saying the actual number, you're basically calling out to the devil. So I don't really care if you don't believe that, but that number is bad. If you have anything with 3 6s on it, get rid of it immediately. Not even kidding. If you're wondering, I got a new debit card after she destroyed that debit card. And it's funny because I see that number way too often, like way too freaking often, like much more often than different numbers. But it's like, ugh, like no, 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 no. I could tell you so many stories, bro, but
at every turn, however, with the Lombards defeating him in a series of battles and forcing him to withdraw in shame back to Syracuse, while his son and co-emperor Constantine IV kept order in Constantinople. His legitimacy tarnished, he was unable to prevent Armenia from falling back into Arab suzerainty, and despite its prominence as the seat of the Byzantine Empire, Sicily would suffer a devastating naval raid in 666, led by Abdallah ibn Qais, that saw huge amounts of plunder enriching Muawiyah in Damascus.
Wow.
Caliph Muawiyah, a veteran of the Battle of the Masts himself, and a staunch enemy of the Byzantines, was now making increasingly aggressive moves at sea with his expanded navy, with similar raids carried out on roads, while Arab fleets secured naval bases along Asia Minor's Mediterranean coast in preparation for a planned siege of Constantinople. Even among Constance's own subjects, he faced danger at every turn, and in 667 he was forced to contend with an Umayyad-backed rebellion by the turncoat Armenian general and would-be emperor Saborios, that briefly took control of much of Anatolia. The rebellion would soon come to naught after Saborius' accidental death in a riding mishap shortly before battle near Melitene. But
divine intervention, man.
This would not be the end of Constance's woes, as Fadala ibn Ubayd, an experienced Muslim general who had briefly operated as a liaison and ally to Saborios, soon laid siege to Constantinople's Anatolian suburb of Chalcedon. Although they succeeded in capturing many prisoners, a lack of supplies and support caused this first siege attempt to flounder. In their original plan, they would have been operating in territory under the sway of their rebel ally, able to rely on local supply routes and bolstered by Saborius' own forces. Forced to operate alone in hostile territory, disease and hunger soon set in, and the army was forced to withdraw, with even the arrival of reinforcements under Muawiyah's son Yazid failing to turn the tide. It does appear that the initial Arab intention was to return to besiege Constantinople proper the following year, as a sizable garrison, 5,000 according to Theophanes the Confessor, was left behind in the captured fortress of Amorion to provide a forward base for a later attack. However, Amorion would be recaptured during the bitterly cold winter that followed, with a eunuch chamberlain named Andrew leading a force through the heavy snows that regained control of the fortress and put its garrison to the sword, delaying the planned attack on Constantinople and denying the Arabs their first major inland foothold in western Anatolia. This small victory was to be Constance's last, however, with the emperor not long outliving his would-be usurper. Constans II was struck on the head with a bucket and assassinated by one of his servants as he took.
No, bro. I could just imagine that playing out in my head. Oh, usually I'm just like used to people getting assassinated by getting stabbing. You know, something, traditional, right? But a freaking bucket, dude, that sounds so clumsy. I'm sorry, that's so clumsy, man.
With further rebellion breaking out in Sicily as the conspirators in his murder acclaimed General Mazazius their emperor in opposition to Constantine IV. The young Constantine would thus be forced to confront both the rebels in Sicily and the still looming Arab attack on Constantinople in the first years of his solo reign. Of these two challenges,
how are you going to do that?
The rebellion of Mazazius would be the swiftest dealt with, though it would still leave the empire weakened in ways that would soon cause further disaster. Constantine called up troops from the embattled frontiers of North Africa and Italy, bringing an end to the rebellion in Sicily after 7 months and ending its brief heyday as the empire's capital. With Constance's murder and Mazazius's acclamation so closely tied to the ongoing religious schism, the general failed to command widespread support in Sicily beyond the soldiers under his command or rally supporters beyond the island's shores. By the account of Theophanes the Confessor, even Mazazius himself had not wished to become emperor and had been chosen as a figurehead leader against his will on account of his good looks. But however easily the rebellion might have been suppressed, the recalling of soldiers from North Africa did leave the Byzantine forces in Carthage far less able to resist the pressure of the Arabs in Tripoli, creating an opportunity for the conquest of the Maghreb, stalled since before the first fitna, to resume. 668 and 669 saw renewed Arab raids capture many thousands of prisoners from the remaining Byzantine territories in modern Tunisia, as the uneasy stalemate the two sides and their respective Berber allies had settled into broke down, with the continuing Arab presence in Anatolia further distracting the overstretched Byzantines from the defense of their frontier provinces. Meanwhile, despite Muawiyah's western focus and enmity towards the Byzantines, smaller conquests still continued apace along the former frontiers of the Sassanid Empire. In 670, Muhalab ibn Abi Sufra conquered Kabul and took at least nominal control of all of Khorasan, one of the only regions formerly under Persian domination to have remained outside of Arab control. And despite some staunch resistance from Turkic hill tribes that nearly saw one force surrounded and wiped out during its return to Kabul, he also successfully penetrated the Khyber Pass to begin the
I heard that after the Muslims conquered Iran, that there was still a lot of resistance within certain pockets and areas and regions, kind of like guerrilla fighters, basically, that resisted the Muslim conquest, despite the fact that the Sasanian Empire more or less ceased to exist.
First inland conquests into modern Pakistan, previous Muslim incursions into the Indian subcontinent having been limited to the more easily traversed coastal lowlands. Politically, some unrest still continued to flare up, as Muawiyah attempted to crack down on lingering support for Ali, with the respected general Hujr ibn Adi and several of his compatriots being executed for refusing to denounce the deceased caliph, an act shocking to most. Still, the next major prize for the largely unified caliphate, and the single-minded focus that would define Muawiyah's later years as caliph, was Constantinople, with the campaign to take it beginning in earnest in 672. A massive Umayyad fleet was outfitted and launched, wintering in the naval bases prepared in Smyrna and Cilicia, while the Byzantines hurriedly constructed great biremes and dromons for the city's defense, equipped with a new and deadly anti-ship weapon, Greek fire.
Bro, I still don't understand how historians do not know how Greek fire was made. I would really love to know how the Greeks managed to do this, but unfortunately, we probably don't know.
With the coming of spring, the fleet embarked for Constantinople, clashing almost daily with Byzantine ships in the waters just south of the Dardanelles from April until September. Compared to the Battle of the Masts, which saw the Arab fleet score victory in a pitched battle between two massed fleets. The presence of Greek fire would have made any full fleet-on-fleet engagement near suicidal for the Arabs.
Yeah, bro, this is like freaking guns versus knives, bro.
Greater size of their navy, leaving it infeasible for the Umayyad fleet to attempt to break through the Dardanelles or bring its full force to bear against Constantinople. Under the command of Yazid, Umayyad armies were ferried to land to surround the city, but a lack of effective naval support.
Bad idea, because the Greek navy is still there and they still have that Greek fire and they could easily go and destroy all those ships and leave your army stranded. You're literally on the other side of what the hell is you're on the other side of the Bosporus Strait, so you're basically stuck if you get your ships destroyed.
The city's formidable defenses a truly daunting task. Though Arab forces...
Wait, what did you say? Hold on a second. Usually I'm able to hear what he's saying.
A truly daunting task of effective naval support made overcoming the city's formidable defenses a truly daunting task. Though Arab forces under Yazid, Fadala and Abdallah ibn Qais did see success in various skirmishes in the surrounding region and in Crete, and were able to honor the passing of the venerable commander Abu Ayyub al-Ansari by pushing to the Theodosian walls themselves to bury him at their base. For 5 full years, the campaigning of the Umayyads failed to break through the Dardanelles and cut off Constantinople from supplies, while the Greek fire-equipped ships inflicted mounting casualties with every engagement. Finally, 10 years into Constantine's tumultuous reign in 678, flagging morale and a large rebellion of Mardaite Christians and escaped slaves in the Nur mountain range north of Alexandretta forced Muawiyah to abandon the campaign, the greatest military disaster the seemingly unstoppable caliphate had suffered since it had first exploded onto the world stage some 4 decades prior. Yet the successful defense did little to change the overall balance of power, with the struggle.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is the thing, is like, bro, Constantinople was still, I would not say at its peak, but it was still, you know, sort of at its height, right? Now compare that with the freaking Ottoman conquest of Constantinople, which was a literal letdown. Like, it's like what one guy put it in my comments. It's like a young person beating up an old man and still coming out of bones losses. Like, how do you how do you even like come out with bones broken, right? But yeah, I'm not even surprised because Constantinople was still peak kind of here. So
struggling Romans still on the defensive against the still expanding Arabs. The following years would give a much needed, if brief, reprieve to the Byzantines, as Caliph Muawiyah's death in 680 was swiftly followed by a new period of turmoil and civil war. At the center of the new conflict was Muawiyah's attempt to secure the succession of his son Yazid, when caliphs had been chosen by election prior to his reign. Yazid was indeed acclaimed as caliph in Medina, but when the governors and notables of the caliphate were summoned to give him their oaths of allegiance, 2 important figures refused to swear the oath: Hussein ibn Ali, son of Caliph Ali, and Abdullah ibn Zubayr, son of the Zubayr who had opposed Ali at the Battle of the Camel some 24 years prior. Despite the rivalry of their fathers, the 2 men were united in their opposition to Yazid and fled from Medina to Mecca to raise a rebellion against him. Offers of support soon arrived from Ali's former power base of Kufa, giving Hussein hope his murdered father's cause could be revived. A cousin of Hussein's, Muslim ibn Aqil, was sent to Kufa ahead of Hussein and his party to determine the strength of their support in Kufa, and out of suspicion the offers might be a trap by Yazid or a local notable attempting to curry his favor. Upon his arrival, he found the offers of support genuine, and as many as 12,000 flocked to Muslim side to pledge their loyalty to Hussein. Upon receiving this news, Hussein departed Mecca to join his cousin in Kufa, a journey he would never complete. Despite his recent rocky succession to the throne, Caliph Yazid was determined to stamp out the rebellion before it could grow to challenge him, and upon learning that Kufa's governor, Nu'man ibn Bashir, had chosen to remain neutral and allow Hussein's supporters to gather, swiftly took matters into his own hands. Nu'man was transferred to a different province, with Yazid's loyal supporter Ubaydallah ibn Ziyad replacing him and initiating a harsh crackdown on the growing rebel band, with Muslim ibn Aqil and several of its other leaders being murdered and the demoralized rebels being scattered under intense pressure from local military forces. By the time Hussein received word of this disaster, he was already near today's Rifai, far from the safety of Mecca, with only a few supporters around him in increasingly hostile territory. Hussein might still have turned back and returned to Mecca at this point, but opinions among his supporters were divided, with some of his tribal supporters offering him sanctuary in the mountains of northern Najd, while many in his own family encouraged him to continue to Kufa and avenge his murdered cousin. Eventually, Hussein took the latter decision, and though many of his supporters deserted him, his march towards Kufa continued. Soon, at the plains of Karbala, his tiny band of supporters was chased down by Ubaydallah's army. Hussein requested to be allowed to return to Mecca, while Ubaydallah demanded Hussein surrender and pledge his loyalty to Yazid. When Hussein refused, the Umayyad forces surrounded Hussein's party, cutting them off from the water to force their surrender. When this too failed, the surrounding army attacked on October 10, 680, killing Hussein and his supporters in a hopelessly unequal struggle.
So much for that guy.
The battle had been short, and its outcome little in doubt. But the killing of Hussein, the Prophet's grandson, would shock the Muslim world, with the date of the battle immortalized by Shia Muslims as a day of mourning and Karbala as a pilgrimage site. Galvanized by Hussein's martyrdom, major revolts led by Abdullah would arise in Mecca and Medina in the following years, with Yazid's experienced Syrian forces under Muslim ibn Uqba inflicting defeats on the rebels, but failing to regain the loyalty of the populace. The siege and bombardment of the holy city of Mecca itself in 683 only created further outrage, with Yazid dying the same year under unexplained circumstances. His son and successor, the sickly Muawiyah II, would rule only a few months before abdicating, leaving an empty throne and a caliphate divided once more, ushering in the second fitna. The years to follow would see numerous figures claim the caliphate. In the Hejaz, Abdullah ibn Zubayr was acclaimed caliph, with a majority of the Muslim world initially backing him. Ubaydallah ibn Ziyad, the general who had martyred Hussein at Karbala, established a power base in Basra and briefly claimed the caliphate as well, but failed to win the same widespread support and was soon driven from Basra by an uprising of Kharijites. And in Syria,
please, kings and generals, keep this red. Look, this looks so much better when it's red. I just want to point that out.
To the Umayyad dynasty, Muawiyah II was
really and truly though, there is nothing much to say. No major battle or anything here. I'm just paying attention not to miss any details that might be important. And the only thing that I could say is the Prophet's grandson. I am surprised that he did die, because if you compare him to Aisha didn't get that same treatment. So I would ask why was the treatment so different, right? Because that's his grandson, but aside from that, nothing really and truly noteworthy in this episode. Let's continue though.
Was eventually succeeded by Marwan, Caliph Uthman's secretary and cousin, with Yazid's young but popular son Khalid being sidelined. Ubaydallah would return to Umayyad service after the failure of his own bid for power, seizing 8 million dirhams from Basra's treasury before he fled, and would lead Marwan's armies in the coming struggle. Marwan's first challenge in defeating the more popular Abdullah was to secure his hold over Syria against a powerful foe uncomfortably close to home, Dahak ibn Qais, the governor of Damascus province, who had loyally served Muawiyah during the first fitna, even leading his infantry at Siffin, but had now defected to Abdullah in opposition to the Umayyads, bringing much of Syria with him. Marwan did have several major advantages. Though some fighting broke out in the streets after Dahak and the young Umayyad prince, Khalid ibn Yazid, each delivered speeches in favor of their faction during the leading of prayers, the Umayyads retained control of the city of Damascus itself, and by extension, the vast treasury of the caliphate.
And another thing that I also forgot to point out is I am extremely shocked that there wasn't any attempts of the Persian Empire to try and resurge or come back, or the Roman Empire trying to take advantage of the civil war going on. I think the only country that actually took advantage of that and like broke off, I think, was Armenia, which kings and generals mentioned at the start. I am very, very shocked that no outside force did not take advantage of what was happening here. You'd think that someone would take advantage of that, but no. Like, I guess divine intervention. I don't know. I guess God was protecting that going on.
To win the loyalty of many local tribes through bribery. Dahak also retained some degree of loyalty to the dynasty he'd served so long, even briefly returning to Umayyad service after negotiating with Khalid and Ubaydallah, making him a rather reluctant and indecisive opponent, spurred on only by pressure from his overwhelmingly anti-Umayyad supporters in the Qaisi tribal confederation. Even so, Dahak and the Qaisi were able to amass a sizable army of 20,000 or more at Marj Rahit, at the edge of the desert to the east of Damascus, joined by supporters from across Syria. Marwan, on the advice of Ubaydallah, gathered his own loyalists from the Kalb Confederation and from the remnants of the once powerful Ghassanids and rode out to challenge him, with the two armies meeting on July 29, 684.
So are we going to have a battle here? Because this is like the end of the episode.
Was outnumbered greatly by Dahak's forces. Nevertheless, his infantry-heavy army was able to hold firm over the course of 19 days of raiding and
so we got a short battle, okay.
Largely mounted force.
I thought we weren't going to get any.
Left was commanded by Ubaydallah, and his right by Amr ibn Sa'id, also known as Al-Ashdaq, an Umayyad clansman whose ambitions would lead him to attempt his own grab for the throne in the years following. Dahak gave command of his right to Zayd ibn Amr, with other notable commanders including Thawa ibn Man of the Banu Sulaym, on whose insistence Dahak had finally broken from the Umayyads. On August 18th, the fighting grew fiercer and the skirmishing gave way to charges and hand-to-hand combat. Despite coming from so many disparate groups, the morale and discipline of Marwan's forces won out, with his hard-pressed infantry weathering numerous disorganized attacks until a mighty champion from among the Kalb, named Zana ibn Abdallah, slew Dahak in the midst of a heated melee. Neither side at first realized the governor had fallen, with Zana throwing himself back into the fray, unaware of the victory he had won. But another soldier, marveling at the warrior's prowess, soon discovered Dahak's body and returned his head to Marwan. Despite still holding a numerical advantage, the Abdullah loyalists quickly dissolved after their leader's defeat, the cavalry of the various tribes under Dahak's banner melting away and returning home or swearing obedience to Marwan.
Well, that was that.
Battles still lay ahead for the Umayyads, even with Syria now firmly in their grasp. Most of the caliphate still recognized Abdullah as caliph, and as the second fitna drew on, more factions and challenges would arise to complicate the struggle for the throne. But with his victory at Marj Rahit, Marwan had rescued his dynasty from the edge of total defeat. And
you know, honestly, this is like a prelude of what would eventually come to plague the Islamic world, honestly. Infighting, so much infighting amongst each other. That would lead to a lot of, you know, just unfortunate events happening and a lot of bad groups eventually coming up and, you know, sprouting, right? and then those groups will eventually come and infight with each other. This is basically a prelude of what will eventually come to happen in the Islamic world. Like, I know that Arab and Muslim are two different terms, but you know, this is why we don't see like a, you know, there's this thing of, oh, pan-Arabism, oh, we need to be one country, but that will never happen, right? Because why? Because too much infighting, you know, always too much infighting. People have their own goals and whatnot. That's just objectively true. No other way to put it. I'm not like insulting anyone or anything like that. I'm just noticing that this is literally like this, like lighting the candle, like the seeds were being sowed right here.
With the armies of Syria and the treasury of the caliphate behind him, he now stood poised to reclaim the empire Yazid had lost. In our next episode on the early Muslim
well, yeah. Nothing much here to talk about, shockingly. Usually I have a lot to say in my early Muslim expansion series, but there was not too much to talk about here. Just a bunch of details to pay attention to. Anyways, if you do like what I have to say in my reactions, though, and you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe. Go check out my other reactions on early Muslim expansion, or just my Islamic history or content reactions or religious reaction or whatnot. It's all on my channel. Make sure to like the video if you aren't new, and if you are new, you know, thank you for watching and goodbye.